Man,
Howdy, I'm Charlie Hurdt, and you're watching the Break It Down show.
man, it's technology is incredible because you're in a completely different part of the nation than I am, and we're able to talk like this. But sometimes you got to wrestle that thing, and sometimes you just got to go. Let's just figure that part of the wrestling and go to a whole new mat and try a whole new thing. So I appreciate you working with me, and I'm excited to talk to you about this fantastic book that you've written. It's a Team Leadership Handbook, and you come to us via a mutual friend. So do we want to mention who introduced us, or should we move on?
Oh yeah, for sure. Oh yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so Mike Guardia is one. He's a very famous publisher in the Army world. So I reached out to him, and he was willing to do this with me because we're both passionate about leadership, and we have the same background. We're Aggies in that background. We have the same armor and cavalry background. And so this was a very exciting experience and journey for us.
Yeah, it is exciting. And I love having Mike on because he's prolific. Well, and also I talked him into writing a book about Delta Company 165th and their time in Bosnia because from basically the first time in history, and I don't think it'll even happen again, a company of counterintelligence agents and interrogators were the tip of the spear for the entire maneuver because it was our job to go out and day to day go find the people that were doing all the fighting and figure out if the fight was over. And so we led this effort, but it's a company of people. It's amazing. And so he and I have been working slowly but surely on trying to tell that story because it's also the dawn of the digital age. Before we deployed, and you may not even know what these words are. You've seen these machines, but they used to be things like TACFax, a tactical fax machine. And this was like state of the art, right? But if it rained, that thing never worked. And so all these things, like you would take somebody, you have to imagine, this is 1996. So someone who's a colonel or a full colonel, they were in the Army in the 70s. It's like, so you would show up with the laptop and you set it on their desk and then spin it around and be like, here's the presentation. They're like, hang on, wait, what is this magic that you're doing? Like they hadn't seen that before. And so Mike is helping us tell that story, and I think it's really cool, and I appreciate him for doing that. But let's talk about the Team Leadership Handbook. Why did you write this book?
Well, so looking into leadership in all our studies, and even through my master's, I realized, and was very peeved, there's not a leadership concept that captures the team-oriented dynamic. Everyone would identify as an autocratic, democratic, servant leader, but it takes no consideration of the team dynamic. And too often you saw people take glory or try to have it, the ends to the means is like self-actualization rather than the benefit of the team. And how we operate in organizations, or especially the military, is not about me. It's about our team, the whole.
Yeah.
And so it ticked me off so much that I did all the research I could to figure out what book explains this dynamic that goes beyond just oneself, that captures the entire team. And I quickly realized there isn't anything, no matter how much I dived into it. There's conveyed so much by all these great books. The team leadership dynamic was conveyed, and it's a universal concept, but there's no common doctrine. And so I had to go get a master's in leadership, but they wanted to praise servant leadership and had nothing to do with the team dynamic. And so that I really wanted to capture, not just for myself, but also for junior leaders and for organizations.
When is the last time someone can be referred to as a junior leader?
Oh, when? Oh, all the time.
Yeah.
It just depends on where you are in the ranks.
So
I'm still referred as a junior leader if I'm talking to a full bird or so on. But when I'm talking to people below me, it's the next person in line, the lieutenant.
Right. So. Yeah. And then how do you draw a distinction between team and unit leadership?
So unit leadership can be very hierarchical or autocratic. Sometimes you have a democratic kind of style, but team is where you have to be interdependent. There we go.
Okay.
And so that means you have to depend on each other. That means like some of these high performance teams, you have people that are experts in their field, but they're very much dependent on the counterintelligence or the analysts you name it, and you have to work together and have that synergy to accomplish a goal. So very different where a unit is more for a product. There's a, you're trying to just accomplish a product or a mission, or a team. It goes beyond just a product. It goes beyond just what I do matters. It goes into what the team does matters, how we interact with each other matters. So it's not just the performance, but also the satisfaction.
You're right, like the team leadership thing. A lot of leadership is it's catchphrasy, right? And so as you're talking, I'm clocking terms that you're saying, like you need synergy, right? Because that's all you have to say, and then everybody's like, okay, we're gonna go get some synergy, but no shit, like how do you build synergy? You know, and you do spend time in these areas, and you sort of like, if it says communication, and then there's like a whole section talking about what communication looks like within the thing you're talking about in that chapter. When you deploy a TAC human team, in this case of the Bosnia deployment, and you didn't know who was going to be what, right? It was all kind of mushed together, and it's like, that's this team. That's the nature of this one specific team. Mm-hmm. Now that team might be assigned to the Stryker Brigade, right? You know, folks that you know from your world. And so how they interacted with the Stryker Brigade is totally different than how the next guys did who went and supported the Swedish battalion, right? So you're sending these teams out everywhere. The team might be led by a warrant officer who was a counterintelligence agent, might be led by a warrant officer who was an interrogator by trade. It might be led by an NCO who was a counterintelligence agent, right? So every leadership role, and they might be split leaders, right? Because you have a technician who is in my case, my team was a technician, a warrant officer, who was an interrogator by trade, but the person who knew things about the team was the NCO, who was an E6 and about to become a warrant officer within about a year and a half anyhow. And so he deploys. And so you have these team dynamics where you have multiple masters, because you have the intelligence master, you have the company commander, and then you have the unit that's the client unit. And they all want different things at different times, at different speeds. Right. That is a tough team to manage. So how do you build a team like that? How do you take a small person team? By the way, we were augmented by a linguist from the Navy, right? Who nobody has any authority over, right? I mean, other than military authority, you can't say, well, I'm mad at you now. Like, it's like, no, we have to all work together and do this really hard job and leave the wire, right? When everybody else is buttoned up and everything else, we're going off into town. How do you build a team so that you can take all these disparate things that weren't supposed to be together 8 months earlier, and now they're actually on the battlefield, right? And they're doing it in prime time. How do you, if you're leading a group of teams, how do you lead that process?
So there's two parts. So I'm going to go big picture first, and then we can focus on like kind of the smaller picture. So if you go to the journey through the journey model and pull that up, and I can show the audience.
Let's see. That is the team leadership concept model.
This one's going to be next. So I'm going to go to figure one, which perfect.
There it is, the journey. I got it. So, I labeled it something else. My bad.
So this helps everyone think. And I'm a visual person, and many people are. So visually, keep it really simple. You have the culture, which is like all these little circles represents like people. Wow. They're all different. Okay. They're all unique and diverse. What you said, like we come from different backgrounds. And then you want to bring them together. So you got to have discipline, like the structures, the rules, like this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to operate. Yeah. And then you have the purpose. Like, what do we have to accomplish? And then you see like TCPs, like the little star of the show. So if you go to the next model, I'm going to go into what kind of that looks like.
Okay. The next model is that one, maneuver?
Right. Yes, I'll reference this. No, go back one. I'm going to reference this one right here.
Okay.
So the principles that you have to abide by if you're going to get along or accomplish anything is culture, purpose, and discipline. And I can break that down, but I want to go into the next step. What you're talking about is the actual collaboration process.
Okay.
So the acronym I use for this is AMO. So it's a really fun acronym. So awareness, you need to have awareness with each other. You need to be transparent. Quick reference, if your maintenance, if all your vehicles are only like 50% operational and you don't have that awareness, you're going to shoot yourself in the foot just trying to get out the door. Right. So you got to have awareness, you got to have meaning, you got to have maneuverability, and then ownership. these 4 principles is what actually allows people to collaborate. If you don't have that, you're going to fail one way or the other. And so going into a team, and the Army does this all the time, and I'm sure all the other military organizations do it, they throw people together. They say, hey, these NCOs, these lieutenants, this captain, like, they just throw people together and like, do this. You're a team now. And so it's like, okay, where do we start? Well, let's give each other awareness. Let's give each other like the receipt of the mission. This is what we're doing. And then let's give each other meaning. Like, what makes this mean something? What does it accomplish? What's the end state? What's the intent? What's the meaning? And then maneuverability is, okay, what do we have to factor in? How do we maneuver? And then being adaptable. I love General McChrystal. His book referenced adaptability was key to any team. If you can't adapt, you're going to be past. You're not developing. You're not being modern. Like, you're going to be outdated in no time. You're going to collapse. Right. It's all about adaptability. And then finally is that ownership. That's personal ownership. And that's also that team ownership. We're only as strong as our weakest link. Like, we have to have ownership of each other. And so when you come together, like, you got to abide by these principles. And I say this, and a lot of this is universal. Everyone understands, sure, makes sense. It's common knowledge. But they don't have the common language. So that having a common doctrine and a common language that we use and that we can teach each other, like when I counsel others, it's like, hey, these are the 3 principles that you're doing really well, but wow, we're sucking on meaning. I can see our morale drop. What are we doing about this principle? And so a lot of this is common knowledge, but having this doctrine, having a reference actually helps a lot.
Yeah, it's a way to assess internally and externally your team's health, and you can guide them. Look, like anything else in the military, it's one thing to say you are empowered, but like, okay, I've got my empowerment license. It's funny when you sit in a staff room and the boss is like, I wonder, everybody's pens come out and they start scratching down. He wonders this. How do we answer that question, right? And so there's these like informal taskings, and they can be very distracting. I was lucky enough that most of my career I was augmenting a team or augmenting a unit. Really, I didn't really work on a team that much. But when he would say, I wonder, I often didn't have to pay attention to that because I had a sense of where he didn't know things. And my job is to fill that I don't know bucket. Right. Even if he doesn't know he has that bucket, we all know that there's unknown unknowns. But that clarity to then take the intel that I'm bringing in, or whatever it is, the information that the commander is getting and saying, hey, everybody. And so I'm going to give you an example. So my buddy Rich and I have been doing some great work. We had established a reputation that with certain people in the unit that we knew what we were doing. And so the boss, this is a brigade commander. He looks and he goes, those 2 guys right there are going to brief next. I want you to pay attention because we're going to be doing less stuff and we're going to do it better. We're not going to put it, and he goes, we're not going to put a big old pile of shit in the floor of the things that we did. We're going to do the right things. And so that first off, that turned every head in the building over towards us so they'd see who those 2 guys were. And then he immediately took his unit and pulled it over to the left so that, I'm saying left, I'm picking a direction. He pulled them over, like he goes, look, we're going to go this way and we're going to go slower and we're going to be more accurate. And it turns out that guy and I, when he was a battalion commander, he was in my AO. We didn't know this at the time, but he had seen some of my work because we were working the same area. I wasn't working directly for him. You can have a lot of battalions in an area. But that ability to watch him real time correct a brigade was amazing. And then if you translate that, if I'm getting this right from what you're saying, if you translate that down, everybody now has, they just had their mission slightly altered. And if you have your ammo thing, which is, by the way, is in chapter 5, everybody. If you have ammo, you're changing the awareness and meaning of your team immediately if you're a team leader. How did I do? Did I do all right with that?
That's great. Yeah, and we even have like the process in the book for the reference. So if you go to figure 6, which is the maneuver planning cycle, I can show you what you're talking about. And while you're pulling it up, you're already fast. So So Sun Tzu, who made the Art of War, the biggest takeaway that you're going to get from that book is know your enemy. Do the analysis. What you're saying, like everything that you did, that is how you adapt. That's how you have awareness. And so like the most critical step is going to be the orient and analysis on this planning cycle, the first 2 steps. After that, you get inside what the military calls the OODA loop. You get inside the thinking and decision-making process, and you're one step ahead of your adversary. And so I want to reference one more thing before we go into the maneuver planning cycle. And if you go back to the first model with the journey through the realm of scarcity, there it is. So a lot of leadership philosophies and a lot of how organizations think is very individualistic. The one thing that they don't take into play is the scarcity and adversity. Everything has scarcity. The biggest one is time, and adversity. Wow, now I'm slipping. So your adversary is going to be what you respect, your respected opponent, whether it's a competitor, whether it's an actual enemy, whether it's morale, like whatever your adversary is your respected opponent you have to maneuver against. And what leadership philosophy actually tells you how to maneuver through that realm. And so if you go back to the maneuver planning cycle for me, this is really simple. You take it away from the project management cycle, a little bit of the MD&P military decision-making cycle that the military uses. And I even looked at the Navy and the Air Force. And I decided to make this a little bit more simple, stupid. Is these 6 steps. 6 steps. And then you just orient the analysis, you develop, evaluate, maneuver, consolidate. And you keep on going down that OODA loop cycle. And that is what makes a good team leader. And that could be any person is that team leader. We'll talk about more. There's like 7 universal archetypes of team leaders. And the analysis is one. It's the person who's willing to have ownership, the person who's willing to be an SME in their field and willing to be that team player that goes beyond just their individual selves. That's a team leader. And so team leaders are the ones making things happen.
I am trying to get ready in that chapter, so I'm ready for it because this is fascinating. These are the things that when you deploy, just understanding these principles, right? Like I can't tell you how important it is and I'm just using my own experience because I would come in, a unit would either rotate over the top of me or I would come into a new unit. And I had to become part of multiple teams. So I had to go to, I'm going to use some military terms, everybody. I had to go to the COOPs and the FOOPs and the battle captain and all these different people that are helping to run this organization. Because if they don't know that I'm there and I'm this, I don't want to say a free radical, but if I am this asset, this free agent asset, then I can't help you, right? And also I can't protect you because one of the things I would do, like let's say I come up on Captain Hurdt, like, hey, Captain Hurdt, I'm Pete, and I'm going into the field gathering information for the commander, and I want to make sure that you are on my reading list so you have a chance to read my reports. Because here's what's going to happen: the commander is going to read my reports. It's going to be influential. I don't want you caught unaware. Now, look, most of you guys, majors, colonels, all of them, they're like, yeah, okay, and then they don't care, right? Because it's not been proven. One time, if someone gets destroyed in the staff room, you know what happens. Everybody's like, I've got to get on Pete's reading list because the boss just said something, or you'll see me having lunch with the boss. And it's like, boy, that Pete guy, he wasn't fucking around. And look, I don't go up. You don't want to know. I keep coming because I'm like, hey, listen, I wrote this report. This might be important to you. And also, if my product is important to you, then when you read it and you're like, that's a bunch of mumbo jumbo, then I'm not doing my job. So I've got to also understand what the COOPs, the FOOP, all these different people, the FOPs, all these op cells, what they need, right? And so what part of the team process am I working in? Because I'm not on their team. They have no authority over me, but I am an expert, and I am trying to give them a better product or to protect them. Now, here's the story is the EWO, the Electronics Warfare Officer, everybody. He's like, here's the slide for the REAB, the radio. It's broadcasting out in these 4 circles. We have 4 REABs. So, all right. I go out. I take the radio, the little Iraqi crank radio that we're out there. Shut up. Nah, there's no radio channel here. Flip it to the AM band. Nope, nothing there. Go to all these different areas, and I come back, and I go to tell the EWO, and I'm like, I'm about to drop this report, man. You're going to want to know that what you're briefing is not accurate, and I don't want you to get caught unawares. And it basically gives me a big middle finger. And I'm like, hey, listen, I'm telling you right now, man, this report is out now. Like people are reading it. The next time you brief, do not brief that slide. And he ignored me. And so when we got there, he briefed it. My boss raised his hand. He's like, "Sir, that information is not accurate. Here's what we did." And again, it's brigade commander. This guy went on to run divisions, right, and get multiple stars. He looks over at us. He looks at his Evo, looks over at us, looks at his Evo, rubs his face, rubs his head. He's just bright red. And it's like the implied rage was the implied task. And then he just like, move on. We'll go back to that. And then so that captain never again ignored what we did, right? So I tried to bring the expertise, but when you're doing that, how do I help those team leaders better recognize the expertise if they don't have the bona fides?
Right, and you brought up like the perfect segue into this. Pull up the 7 team archetypes, if you will. It's the one with the star. There we go. Yep. All right, fancy looking star. So basically, team leaders, empowering them is the common doctrine. How do you help them? So your job is either one of the two. You're either the specialist because you're the SME or consultant, or you're actually part of their cartographer kind of dynamic. And so you're the analyst. You're actually providing this critical data that they need to act on. And so you're one of those two team leaders, and you're bringing it up as you should, and they have to act on it. And what I love in military organizations that you see really well, you see a really good brigade commander. It's not because he himself is like really good. It's because the team behind him. And you see like I may look really good, but first off, like, wow, it's not because actually the figurehead. It's who he's backed. It's all the team leaders who are coming alongside of him. And then like, who's the number one most important person in all the military? The number one position.
The soldier? I don't know. You tell me.
Yeah. So it comes down to team leaders, the people that manage those direct soldiers, the bottom leader. The first leaders are the most important people, and everyone else above them, that's what they do at the end, is they're supporting down, all the way down to the team leader. And so it goes down to people like you who are the team leaders, who's taking the ownership and bringing it up. But if people aren't listening, it's up to those more positional authorities, which he was the navigator, the brigade commander. He's a strategist. He's a decision maker. He's the one that said, hey, you need to get your act straight. Yeah. Listen to this team leader. Listen to the specialist. Like, you got to listen to the guy who knows, because he was enforcing that team dynamic, because you got to enforce that team leadership dynamic. If you don't, then you're going to have things fall through the cracks, and people that aren't empowered in what they're really good at, and you're not recognizing them and acting on it. And so you're going to have a faulty organization who can't perform well, and they don't have really good satisfaction in what they do because they're not recognized.
This is all fantastic, man. I love this. I love this level of talking about, in this case, military organizations, but any kind of organization, because it's easy to be a leader and think my unit's running great. Like the next commander would be like, I got the finest soldiers in the U.S. Army, or whatever it is, right? Like every single commander and sergeant major. And when you watch, I had this really unique perspective where, again, the unit would rotate over the top of me. So I know more about the area than they do. And I know the history of the past units. And so I'm going to give you a story, and we'll work within your model. But understanding like when a team is not working well, and this is the biggest thing. Look, yes, I'm a counterintelligence agent. I'm going to go into town. I'm going to find things out that nobody else finds out. But I'm primarily and purposefully not going to look for threat-based information, because the guy who runs around going, where are the bombs, doesn't ever get to find out where the bombs are. So I find out about danger by not looking for it. And I look for how units are performing. How are we doing our job? Is the impact, because you know this and I know this, every commander's got a mission statement. And so I look at the mission statement until I know the mission statement so well, I know what it says before I even see it. And so I'll look at the commander and I'll even say, I've not read your mission statement, but it's something like this. And I give them the 4 lines that equal their mission statement. They're like, okay, shit, this guy knows what he's doing. If the unit thinks that it's improving the capacity of the agricultural, element, like it's that line of effort is agriculture, and and it's briefing, hey, we're winning. And I go into town and I don't find that win. And the commander is desperate to know that. Even better, if I go, hey, Captain Hurdt from the ag team is not even aware of how the ag system works here, and he is completely out of step with the farmers. It's not my job to correct that, right? I bring the information. I peek over the ridge and I go, farming's fucked up. And so I come back and I write the report, right? So now the commander can do what the commander does, but even better with more clarity. He can say, hey, let's direct and improve this asset or remove this asset, because that's happened too. Like, we had a PSYOP team sent out to the battalion from like division, from the RC South, everybody. This is Afghanistan stuff. And that battalion commander said, nope, they're behind us. They're not going to contribute to the fight. We don't need them. And he was right, because they were going to bring the doctrinal book answer to a place that was way past that. So the story is one of the units had the Iraqi general that we partnered with come over to the American camp, right? Now we're doing, like the Iraqis own this battle space, like we're saying, hey, this is your thing. We're here to help and advise, and help you fight off the enemy. And the general was kept in his vehicle in his convoy. And it's like 1.5 miles between these two locations. And they would not let the general on the camp because there was traffic at the gate and they couldn't sort it out. And there was a thing broken down, right? And so they sweated that dude for hours outside the gate and wouldn't let him in because they didn't trust him and they didn't know how to do it. And so I remember that lesson, because the general would remind me and my interpreter all the time. Like, remember that time those, the Americans left me outside for 4 hours on my own camp? I'm the general. I own that, So this lesson was so hard to get the Americans to understand, like, hey, you're not going to fix this problem, but you have to be aware that it's there. The ability to communicate that very important message, and not just the fact that the general was pissed off, but that he held that anger every single meeting. He always was. It was an affront, right? And then I'm going to give you the opposite end of that story. So the colonel that ran the space, he was going to leave the camp. It's a different colonel, different time, but same space. And there was all kinds of fuckery at the gate. And he gets on the radio and he's like, whatever, like, this is Jazz Hand 6, actual. Everybody in front of that's not his call sign, but I don't want to identify anybody. Everybody between me and the gate, get the fuck out of the way. And you know what happened? Everybody got the fuck out of the way. And so I'm like, and I was like, that what you did right there, we didn't do for the general. And that changed his view of the whole thing. And he's like, oh man, I get what you're saying now. This isn't just some dumb story. This is like really important in my relationship and how I manage it. And the entire unit just ever so slightly changed. My intel changed him. And he's like, I know better now where I'm going, right? And so it can come in from a crazy thing that it's going to take you time to understand. It's the thing I learned. Even colonels, as smart as they are and everything else, sometimes they're too smart for their own good and they can't hear the thing that's being brought to them. What are your thoughts on all that bullshit that I just said?
Oh man, you unpacked a lot, and I love this story. Because you get that all the time. Military organizations, you get the crap that you just have to deal with. I love it, because that's when all the friction happens. And that's when you actually learn so much. But it takes, I didn't put this in the book, but it takes like that learning organization to like, let's get this done. This is the actual, like, so what? I got to do this. Yeah. And so looking at this, you have to have that trust. You have to have that embodiment of a team. If you don't, no one's going to want to help out that general. If you don't, no one's actually like, your problem's my problem. No, I'm going to leave that up in your plate. Like, no, you can't do that in a team. Even if he's a 2-star, 3-star general, like, you got to make it personal. You got to actually identify, like, those problems are a thing. I want to fix it like you did. Like, I'm going to help you. And so I love that, because that is the team. And this book doesn't give you the answers to how, like, if you're this kind of person, you're going to do blank. Like, no, because that's not what good leadership philosophy is. It's meant as a reference to how to have that dynamic. And then more so, like, if you want this dynamic, know your role. Like, you knew your role. And so the questions you should be asking are, do you have awareness? Or in this case, your boss, does the boss have awareness? Like, what is the meaning behind this gate operation? Like, oh no, he can just totally just blow them off. Like, that's the point. Like, he needs access. Like, cool. Where's the maneuverability? Oh, that's easy.
Yeah.
He's got it. Where's the ownership? Oh, I can own that. I can give him this recommendation. Done deal. And so the reference in this book, you're supposed to ask those questions. But as I've learned as a commander, whenever I'm trying to counsel people, and if you've been in a typical action review, they say, hey, what could we do better? Well, we got messed up pretty bad. The circumstances are really bad. They start just the blame game. They start doing circumstantial stuff. And then they start pointing fingers after that. Well, so-and-so did this. They shouldn't have done that. And then they start talking tactics. And it's like, okay, now it's just like off the walls. Like, this is pointless and meaningless. Like, this doesn't actually help us get better. And so this reference book kind of like cuts to the chase. Like, all right, where could we have improved our awareness?
Right.
Your story is to get on the radio and just say, hey, I'm coming. Get out of the way.
Yeah.
So you boom, you got the awareness. Like, where could we have awareness?
Yeah.
Done. And then what kind of meaning do we have? Oh, cool. Let's just clear the air on that. And then what kind of maneuverability do we have? Oh, cool. Let's improve our SOP. This is just going to be standard now. And what kind of ownership do we have? Like, who makes that call? Like, who enforces the SOP? It just helps with that trying to counsel people, improve things, asking questions based off the handbook, asking questions based off whatever you're referencing. Yep. And this is meant to capture those things that you can use in counseling, developing, AARs, you name it. Like, this is supposed to be the reference. And how you understand people, this is supposed to be how you understand people better.
Yeah. There's so much greatness in that. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, one last thing I wanted to reference, the 7 team archetypes. I loved this because it was similar to the 7 love languages. Some people use it. I think most people have done the 7 love languages, and they realize, like, aha, like, this is how I think. This, it's not perfect, but it's like, this actually makes some sense, and it helps me understand others. This is supposed to help you have that kind of thing. Who is you? So you are the specialist. Like, what you say means the cartographer needs to react to it, the analyst, or the planner, the quartermaster. Like, they need to take this in consideration, like, who listens, and it helps that team construct of what's your role? Where do you fall in?
Yeah, no, it's great. That taking that story forward, right? Because, and I can see my little 3 wings of the archetype star there. Sometimes I'm an analyst, sometimes I'm a communicator. It kind of depends on which role I'm playing. And what I had to learn how to do, because I didn't belong to anybody, was I had to augment what was there and help them see things that they couldn't see so that their machine worked better. That's actually when the military gave me a master's degree. That's what I learned how to do. I didn't realize it was going to be so helpful. But that lesson that I was trying to teach the commander at the time, like, hey, there is a very bad wound in your relationship that you're adopting. And unless you understand that, you can't hope to partner with this guy at the same level as you need to, right? Because these modern wars are primarily driven by conversations. And we have way more conversations than we shoot rounds. It's just a fact, right? And I know, like, look, the tanker guys, like your guys' thing is like death before dismount. And what did we do to you guys the entire last few wars? It's like, no, we didn't even have any tanks here. Go ahead and dismount and head over that way. Like, it was completely the antithesis of what you guys did. And so I had to understand the culture of what you guys were, or artillery guys, or infantry, whatever it was, right? So I took that general lesson, and, well, first off, I watched how the commander dealt with it. And he said, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to invite the general over here, and we're going to do it right. And look, do it right was just, hey, why don't I host you today instead of me always coming to you? We'll set everything up. And so we hosted the general. The general came over, and everything, it was all set up. It's all a setup. Everything's in the way. And everything just got the fuck out of the way. And he came in, and people were saluting him, and and then we told the colonel knew already. He's like, and then I'm going to say, you're never going to be, like, you're always going to be the boss when you come here. You are the boss. It's going to happen that way. And then my interpreter and we go backdoor and we talk to the general and see how that test went. We're like, hey, listen, we've been talking to these guys and trying to get them to understand that you're the boss. And he's like, this is a wonderful thing. I never expected you guys to do this. Not us, but like the Americans.
Right.
And, it was so great to see them respect me like that. Because all the general wants is to have you guys polish some garbage cans, salute, and, act like they're a fucking general, I took that lesson myself, and I was like, holy shit, if I can bring Iraqi or Afghan VIPs on the camp and treat them how we would treat an American VIP, they've never had that treatment. I said, now you think about that. And so there's some risk involved with this, right? Because I'm going to grab Abu Charlie, right? Whose kid's name is Charlie. And I'm like, hey, why don't you come on the American camp? I'll take you in. We'll have some ice cream. We'll have a meeting here. You don't got to feed me. I'll feed you. And then Abu Charlie's like, yeah, I'll do that. And so here's what I do. And I'm going to talk for a minute here, but you'll understand this. So the first thing I do is I know I want to do this. And I go to the sergeant of the guard guy. I'm like, hey, tomorrow you're going to be sergeant of the guard, right? Okay, great. I'm going to bring a guy on. I don't want you to search him. I just want you guys to salute him and treat him like a VIP. You don't have to do this. I will absolutely go to the boss and make you do it. But I'd rather you get a chance to be a leader, especially in front of your guys, and say, yeah, this is what we're going to do. If you need me to go up, I will go all the way up, and everybody will know about this, and you'll be the function of an order, or you can decide what you want. Now, we kind of let them choose their adventure, because there's no wrong answer, because this guy's not going to be a threat, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes the E5 would be like, yeah, fuck that, had commander tell me that, all right, great. But other guys are like, I get what you're trying to do. Okay, cool. Yeah, no problem. I'll have my guys stand here. They'll get to the position of attention. They'll salute, and they will not search. Or they gave me some kind of compromise, but they weren't going to search the guy. They were going to treat him like a VIP. Once I brought, and so everybody knows this is going to happen. And I'm not surprising you by not being surreptitious or anything. But once we sat down in that chow hall, and there's air conditioning, and there's ice cream, and there's pancakes, and there's all these wonderful things, I'm blowing that sheik's mind. I'm blowing that government leader's mind, because I would do this regularly. And by the way, the boss knows he's going to be there at 3:30, off hours. And he would come by and be like, hey, Pete, who are you talking to? And I'd be like, oh, this is a very important person, And so the boss got to set up kind of hey, it's great to meet you. I'm glad you're talking to Pete. He's one of my, and we would do this whole thing. And the VIP, getting treated like a VIP, totally changed my ability. And this all goes back to the general. It totally changed my ability to get introduced to Afghans that no one else could ever meet, because now I knew how to pay respect. And let me tell you something, man, that unlocked a lot of power for that commander.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
And so this goes into kind of the bigger picture. This was a very specific story. But you have to have the foundations in place for that to even be a thing. So I'd like to reference back to the figure 1 model. And this is the concept model. So with that, there's a list of interrogative questions that you can have to improve. Back one. Sorry, it's figure 2. The concept. You had it right the first time. Thank you. It goes back to culture, purpose, and discipline. And I've had to go into depth with this with each command team I've had, is where do we stand? And so mutual respect was this is really important in my job. I need to treat these VIPs really importantly. And so you'd rank that I have to focus on this. And you'd circle that and come back around to it. This is huge. Interdependence, not so important in this case. Competition, no, not trying to do that. So in my culture, the biggest thing I'm trying to do is that respect. Then you go down to purpose. What's the purpose? Well, for you, it was you needed to unlock more relationships. You need to have more influential power, and you need to be able to actually get things done through that relationship with the Afghans. And so it's not really, it's that shared vision of being a team. You wanted to have those really good relationships. Initiative, reinforcement, you can come back around to that. Initiative is what can we do proactively? And then reinforcement is how can we build this redundancy? You built a whole system in place to keep this up. And also the general knew when to pop in. So now you're reinforcing that same purpose.
Yeah.
And lastly is the discipline. How are we prioritizing this? You made sure your relationship and that dialogue, bringing the VIP through, it was a priority and people knew it. It was a huge priority that was nested with the general. And then you go into communication. How do we communicate? And it was him, that's where he took onus to actually introduce you. Like he
That's
actually
right.
praised you up in that communication. And so that reinforced like that discipline of who to talk to. It's this guy.
Yeah.
And then conflict
There's other.
resolution. Oh, go ahead.
No, you're the guest. Keep talking.
Oh, okay. Well, so with that, like using the culture, purpose, discipline, this is like the big picture, but you had to have those things in place. And you had to have these foundations to actually have that kind of dynamic. And this wonderful, like practical thing to do that's actually really small. But if you didn't have this foundation in place, yeah, you want to go 2 steps. And so many people, as you've probably seen in your field, like got squashed on. They were treated insignificant, like, hey, cool, your job is cool, but like kind of mind your own business, stay within the regulations, like stay within protocol. Like come on, where's the maneuverability? Like, come on.
Yeah.
But you have to have that kind of culture, purpose, and discipline in your organization to even go 2 steps down the road. And so I love that, like you had that and you had the general backing you up, and that's awesome.
That all took a long time to learn how to build too, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
And there's different characters that I had to unlock. It was almost like a video game where I had to unlock these people that were adversarial towards me. Because you think about someone like me coming into a unit, I don't belong there, and now I'm impacting the unit, and it's on me, right? And I'm not really a team. I'm one person, but I am a team because I bring a lot of weight to what I'm doing. Like the sergeant major problem, I couldn't unlock that. And so those guys would be knifing me in the back all the time because I was getting a lot of face time with the commander, and when you're deployed, this people don't understand, the commander, colonel, full colonel, whatever it's going to be, they don't get to have a lot of friends. And so if they have got free time and I'm sitting on the couch and we just get a chance to let our hair down a little bit, man, they love that. And that helps them. And we might have a conversation that unlocks them because all of our brains are spinning so fast. Sometimes a new bit of input changes things. So I want to go back to the VIP access to the camp thing. And again, like this does, when I tell other veterans this, they're like, whoa, you brought Rockies on the camp? And I'm like, it's their camp. Yeah. If John McCain showed up, what would you do? Like, oh, that's John McCain. That's different. Like, no, it's the same fucking thing, right? So it's on me to help them see that. So when I go to the S4 and like, I don't have to do all these things. But the important part is I work within a team and I act like a team member and I lead. So I always talk about leading within an organization. This is like one of these things. So I go to the S4. Everybody, the S4 is the person in charge of things, boots, food, and they make sure everybody gets what they need, right? And so if I go to the S4 and I say, hey, sir, here's your chance, just like I do with the E5, I'm going to be bringing an Afghan elder on the camp. I'm going to take him to the chow hall and I'm going to feed him. And then but I need a letter from you authorizing that chow because the chow hall is different, right? And so I've got to get that letter from them. And almost to a man, it was like, no, I won't do that. And I'm like, understand, the next thing I'm going to do is go across the hallway to the boss, and he's going to tell you to do it. I'm just giving you an opportunity to be a leader and do this with me without doing that. I'm not trying to jump at these steps. I'm just saying this is going to happen anyhow. Why don't we just do it? And I would just step back and let them decide. It's their adventure. They can choose. And then every single one of them was like, no, you're going to have the commander tell me that's okay. And so I'm like, all right. But the thing is I know that they're going to fail that test because I'd watched them all fail it. And I'll even say every single time this happens, I've done this a lot, and they're all captains. You're a captain. You know how this goes. And I'll say, hey, Captain Hurdt, listen, it's going to happen because I've already built everything in place. I'm just trying to have you be part of it. And it's okay if you don't want to. You'll get it afterwards. And then they're like, nope, no thanks. Go ahead and have the boss tell me. So I go across the hallway and the boss be like, yeah, okay. Hey, Captain Hurdt, get him whatever he needs, right? Because they hadn't learned that I had made myself so valuable to the commander that the commander would take me on his mission wherever we want and say, this is my PSD, this is your PSDP. If you want to go anywhere, we're going where you want to go. Right. And so the S4 doesn't know that. They can't know that. And so how do I bring that person in? Well, I'd have these kind of conversations with them because a lot of what I did had nothing to do with S4 functions. But if that person knew that I was valuable to the commander, now I had that exchange of trust, like, oh, Pete's an important guy to the commander. If he asked me for something, I should just give it to him so I don't have to waste losing one fight to okay, great. And so the relationships would improve. The sergeant major thing improved because I said to the sergeant, I started saying to the sergeant major, like, I don't know exactly how to help you, but what I do see is access to all these different patrols. I'm in all throughout your battalion or all throughout your brigade. And I want to keep these guys safe because I know what right looks like. And if I see guys rolling around in strikers and their drinks aren't a ratchet strapped down, and I saw like one unit, I saw a 50 cal barrel floating free in the back of a MRAP. And I'm like, and if I was Sergeant Major, I'd want to know that. And I know that those guys want that too, right?
Yeah.
And but you have to protect me. You cannot say that I said anything. And the Sergeant Major's like, Pete, I got it. If you can help me out with that, I would love that. And I'm like, and I'm not telling anybody. I'm just trying to keep people safe. And the Sergeant Major's like, I know, yes, I get it. And so they would get impassioned. I'm not lying. Like they would be like, yes, Pete, no, this is great. This is great. And I'm like, and by the way, my biggest purpose is to let you know when I see what right looks like, so you can go out and troop these guys up and slap them on the back. And man, oh man, I had friends forever once I unlocked that. But I got kicked off of camps before that. I got fired. I mean, and I wasn't being bad. I didn't know how to work my team, which is me. I didn't know how to work my team within their teams. It was really a tough transition until I got more elegant, and I stopped doing so much stuff. I followed the colonel's advice, and I just did the right things. And I'm like, doesn't matter what I do. The S4 needs to be part of this process because he's going to be an advocate for me after this.
Oh, that's perfect. And you got to have someone that loves their job, that takes the initiative and actually wants to make the team better. So I'll ask you, like, why are you so proud of those moments? Why are you so proud of your service?
You're asking me.
Oh, yes. It's a question
okay,
for you.
Yeah.
What makes you so proud?
Because I was able to make a difference. One of the most prideful things, and pride in a good way, because we've done good work and it's hard work, is we had a brigade sergeant major. This is like when I've got my multiple degree black belt now and what I do. And this doesn't sound like spying, by the way, but 100% is, because I'm helping the commander win more. That's like help the commander win more and lose less, help the enemy lose more, win less, right? And so I'm doing this, all four of those in one thing. And when the sergeant major brigade comes up to me, this is a maneuver brigade, for crying out loud. And he's like, Pete, you and Rich, that's my partner, you guys have totally changed the way we see this fight. 180 degrees you brought us around, and we couldn't have done it as fast as we did without you. We would have got there, because you always have to give them that win. But we did it so much faster with you guys. You guys are undeniably one of the most important facets of our entire fight. You know, and that was like, yes, this is what I'm trying to do. I'm helping you guys win more and lose less right here, you know. Unfortunately, you know, then they leave.
Yeah.
But yeah, I am proud of those things, because that's about as good as one dude or two dudes can do in a 5,000 person organization.
And this is exactly what I'm talking about. And I don't have the little PowerPoint for you, but the team leader is the team leader. You don't say to those people like, hey, this guy was a servant leader. Like, no, like, you weren't. But that's not what your job was.
Right.
Like, oh, no, this guy was an autocratic leader. Like, what did they identify you as? Like, what was your leadership style? In this sense, like, you're the team leader. You're the guy that has the initiative, who's proactive, who loves his job. And the outcomes that you're going to get being a team leader is that pride that has that high performance and high satisfaction. Like, bottom line, like, you want to be the team leader. And myself, I want to be identified, I'm the team leader. And that also means, like, the people around me. Like, I don't leave a command thinking, oh, so great. No, I leave and I remember, like you do, you know, the team I was with was fantastic, and this is what we did. The performance is like, this is what we accomplished. You know, this is what I did too. Like, it's so cool, but it's not a very selfish self-actualization. It's like, no, you're just proud. It meant something, and you can't do that with other leadership philosophies. You can't identify yourself in these other means without just having this weird convoluted sense. Like, I want to be identified as a team leader. Like, it meant something. It had that performance satisfaction. Yeah. So I love that.
Yeah, it's amazing. And by the way, one of the funny things is I was never a team leader by definition, by title, right? But and so my team would derive the benefit of this, but sometimes they would be not even on the same camp, and they would have all like that. One of my goals was always, because I play hard when I army, like I just do. And so I'm like, all you motherfuckers over here eating your goddamn ice cream, I'm going to kick your asses. All of you combined, I'm going to outwork and out-influence you guys. And I would just destroy people. And I would tell my boss, like, listen, you're going to get sick of me. but I play hard. And so if you see me playing hard, I apologize, but this is war, and it's serious, because I was a black belt at what I did. I knew how to chop things up and defeat things. And sometimes those team leaders didn't like it. And sometimes I extracted a cost from the team because I'm bold, right? And so sometimes the maverick oversteps the line, because everybody thinks they're a maverick until you get into trouble and you're like, oh, fuck. I fucked up. And my job is particularly dangerous physically, but it's also dangerous within the unit.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, there's a number of times where, well, okay, so here's an example. I'm always hard on the ag teams because they never held the standard. They were always below the standard. And the boss needs to know that. That's just how it is. Everything is open. It's all professional. And so this full colonel who ran the ag teams for a brigade was sent out an email and blasted it out like on a reading list and said all this stuff that was just wrong. And so I came back and I said, unlike Colonel Johnson, I think this actually is the right thing. Here is what's happening. And then bam, 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 I assassinated his thing. And he was public about it, so I was public about it. Well, that did not sit well with that 06. And he wanted me out of theater, and they were going to kick me out of theater. The DCO, who everybody says the deputy commander, he's also an 06. So 06s have conspired to kick me out. And my boss, my team leader, went in there because he got called in. He's like, hey, we're going to send Pete home. And my boss was like, no, you're not. No, you're not. What do you think? Why do you think you're sending him home? He's my guy, not your guy. I'm not sending him home. And so the 06 was like, he said, called Colonel Johnson out and publicly, and that's not, whatever, blah, 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 blah. And it was because I said, unlike Colonel so-and-so in his email, in response to his email, right? And those words was what set it off. And so the DCO dressed down my team leader, and it's all professional, but in a way that it was like, this is an ass chewing. And at the end of it, my boss said, you show me in that report in that email that Pete wrote where he was incorrect, and I'll send him home. And the DCO cooked on it for a second. It's like, fuck, because I had done my job, right? And so I had mismanaged it a little bit, but I needed a team leader in that moment. I needed that guy to have a big enough ass to get chewed on, and the backbone to say, no, not doing it. He's valuable to this unit. He's going to be right back out tomorrow. And sure enough, and look, and then my boss is like, I have to now chew you out. This is me chewing you out. And don't write emails. Let's say start off with unlike Colonel so-and-so. I'm like, well, what am I supposed to write?
Yeah.
Because if I had let that go, we would have fucked that whole mission up. We would have the wrong orientation, the wrong culture, all these things. And I only was able to do that because I was deliberate. I was careful. And I didn't just make shit up. I didn't do it for my ego. I did it because this is what the mission needed. And thank goodness I had that team leader, because a lot of times I would have just been sent home. They would have just rolled over because they didn't have the backbone. But I had a great team leader, and it worked out for the unit as well, because I was able to do a lot more good stuff after that.
And every organization wants that. They want someone who can be selfless enough that they're willing to take the ass chewing. They're willing to take the chewing out, like, oh, wow. Like, I just took all the bullets. Like, that hurt. But it mattered, because the bigger picture, what you saw, was the team's mission was critical. It wasn't worth your own pride, or wasn't worth the other colonel's pride. It mattered. And sure, there's other communication things that you may or may not want to do, but like it mattered, and you got to do it at the end of the day. And so I love that. Like, that is a team leader.
I don't want to run out of time, but I want to cover this. So I'm going to jump in here, and I'm going to push back a little bit on your theory, because I'm sure you're interested in what else is out there. So, and I discovered this through somebody else too. So someone else gave me this conversation. There's a thing called action, and it's applied primarily to teachers, but we learn all kinds of things from different fields. And so essentially, and I'll just make this simple, instead of the OODA loop, it's the DAO loop. And so you go decide, act, orient, and whatever the other O is, right? I'm talking out loud here, but you start the loop at decide and act, observe, and then orient, right? And that little twist unlocks us from bringing preconceived notions into what we're doing. So get out, like, we're going to be out there. This is action first type stuff. And instead of worrying about being faster, getting inside of someone's OODA loop or DAO loop, it's not about speed in the case of a lot of our modern fights. It's about understanding your impact in that area. And so by just looping slower, but more and understanding what you were doing, you will quickly go faster than what the enemy is doing, because you're not just doing different things for different sake. You're deciding, you're acting, you're observing, you're orienting. And that cultural piece is huge, right? Like we often talk about culture, we blow right by it. Like, you got to have good culture. Okay, what does that mean? And that's hyper complex. And that's a whole different conversation, a whole different show. But that decide, act, observe, orient, academically is a different approach. And I independently found that was a better way to do it, instead of the more, I'll say, slow, observe, orient, decide, act.
Oh yeah, it is. And that's why I try to adapt the whole maneuver planning cycle so that it helps teach this, not just in the military, which we use ULU, but also in business organizations and institutions, for them to teach, like, this matters. Like, that thinking and decision-making process does matter, and it's actually really effective. And so you have to go down the cycle.
One of the things that allows successful, and I'm using my experience because I think it's applicable here, because the team part of this, right? You do have these teams. You've got an ag team, you've got a PSYOP team, you've got a CA team, you've got all these different teams that are out there working, and you have to be interoperable. So I need access to the battlefield. I have no vehicles, I have no guns, so I need someone else's help. No matter what, I've got to augment the team. And that ability to understand, like, when it's working, because it's not just go do the mission. Like, you have to actually build the parts first. Like, hey, I'm going to be valuable. We're going to cross collaborate here. I'm going to leave you alone there. All of that, to have a guide like your incredible book. Here it is for everybody, the Team Leadership Handbook. It does apply to business. It does apply to day-to-day life, and you can learn let me use culture, and then I'm going to shut up. I talked a lot this episode, but you got me excited.
Oh, this has been great.
In culture, I know people don't like quad charts, so let's just get over the fact that I'm using a quadrant thing. But if you, and I saw you use Eisenhower's thing, and this is sort of
I use a quad chart too. Yeah.
So if I understand their military decision-making process, and I understand their goals, these are on XY axis, and they understand the same for me, then we can get quadranted and pick better things so that we're working collaboration. It's on me as the interlocutor to use their cultural path instead of forcing them on mine. Because if I can use their path, and there's a good example of this here. I'll use this image. This is a very rare thing to see. That's the district governor's plan in where I was in Afghanistan. And so I said to him, what do you want to do? How do you want to do it? What speed? When do you need our help? When do you want us to fuck off and get out of your way? And so he took command. He said to me, one of the most powerful things my entire time in the military, he said, Pete, there's only room for, this is a warrior. This is a Mujahideen guy. This is also a religious elder, obviously a family elder, and a governor. He's got all this prestige. And he said, Pete, there's only room for one sword in the scabbard. And I'm like, okay, that's great. I take it to the boss. And the boss is like, okay, I'm not the sword. Imagine that. An infantry battalion commander saying, nope, not me. I'm not the sword. I get it. You want to be the boss? You're the boss. Tell us what to do. And so I extracted this plan from him. And so I got the plan. We figured it out. I was very deliberate about this, and it took a long time. When I was done with it, I turned it into the PowerPoint thing, because I know I've got to communicate this to the Army, and you're gonna love how this goes. And I'm gonna really shut up and get out of your way. So I brought the plan back to the governor in slide form so he can see it, but I had fucked it all up. And he went, this is amazing, but you've got it all wrong. And he started correcting it, right? And he told my interpreter, sat down for like an hour, and they really went through, and my interpreter was awesome because I built a team with him as well. And he's like, I got it. You don't have to do anything. I'll take care of it. So he brought the whole plan back to me.
Wow.
In the exact same form. So when I go to the Army and I'm like, hey, this is the district governor's plan, they're like, bullshit. He didn't make that in PowerPoint. And I'm like, yeah, I know. That was the first objection. Well, how do you know it's true? And then I explain what I did, and they're like, oh, fuck me. So that ability to integrate cross teams, right? And then start to go out. And now it's my job to champion this plan to the ag team, to the civil affairs team. The commander's going to do their part, but I'm also doing the ground part. So I am integrating into multiple teams as I do this. But I had to do my job first of like slowing down, allowing the governor to be the governor, allowing him to tell me what was important, fucking it up on purpose so he could fix what was there to tech, all that stuff, so that then the entire unit could move. And I'm not Superman. I just was very deliberate about these things. But these little small steps, when generals are like, people who talk about tactics are amateurs, well, guess what? You're O for your career, man. And you don't understand that these little small things, they impact how we do things.
Yeah. And so I'll leave it off with one, like, your story has been incredible. And so if you want to be a team leader, if you want to actually reference, and no matter what field you're in, counterintelligence, you name it, like, this book can help you. It's a handbook to make you the best kind of leader you can. And so with that, it also empowers you to teach and counsel, develop others around you, and understand what might be off. And then there's a link for you. So with that, you want to know how to make your organization better or your team better. This handbook will get you in the right direction. You want to be another team and another all-star, then you got to go in this direction where you actually know what you're doing and you know how to improve yourself. And this is
tons of great sayings. Yeah, tons of great sayings in here, like going from cogs to captains and all this. This is what got me thinking about it when I first was perusing through the PDF. Was just there's just so much meat in this, and we're so focused on the big mission and going forward that we don't understand that we're ill prepared to do the mission that we're doing. And I'm not saying, give yourself analysis paralysis, but I am saying, like, hey, I'm going to give you, I'm going to really shut up here in a second. You got me so excited. We had this Jordanian colonel, full colonel, augmenting us. He's in the brigade. So our boss is brigade 06. These guys are career peers. We did not respect that guy. Openly laughed at our Romanian partners because they had accents and they would say silly things. And so when I see that, that's a tasking to me to go, oh man, we've got to help these guys be relevant because they're fighting the fight. And no matter what their level is professionally, they are our partners and we have to treat them like that. And if we have a problem with it because we don't know them good enough, then it's on Pete to show you, like, hey, you're losing right now. Let me show you how to win more. And so we would go out with that full colonel, Jordanian guy, and he would talk about how we were going to use religion to win the war. And that was his job because he knows how to do Islam better than all of us. And so we would go around with him. And this is funny. So talk about getting fired. He called a meeting down at the PRT. PRT is the provincial, the team that handles the province and building it up. And they got this big charter. So we're going down to the PRT and the colonel calls the meeting. And so we go in, we're his guest. He drove with his PSD. And we were going to start the meeting. Oh, I don't know, like in an hour. We got to get there way early. And so we're down at the chow hall just hanging out and talking. And then we go up to the meeting and we brought some snacks because we've been in this room for a long time. It's a new unit. And so we know that you have to like replenish the snacks. So we brought some snacks up because we're good guests. And the doctor for the PRT, the doctor, not the commander, a doctor. It's like, who are you guys? Why are you here? We're like, well, we're with the colonel, And by the way, the doctor is sitting in like the commander's chair. And so when the colonel comes in, he sits down just wherever because he's not worried about that. And the doctor thinks he's running this meeting. And the colonel's like, hey, listen, I called this meeting. These are my guests. I wanted them here because they know what they're talking about. We got a SEAL. We got all these different people from this team. And that doctor was like, I had no idea. And he just, for whatever reason, and we hadn't even really met this guy, hated us, hated me and Rich. And so we had this really productive meeting. We talked about a bunch of things that we wanted to do. And the colonel got a chance to feel for what he was going to do in the battlefield, right? Because he was new here also. And so we go back up to our main camp and we get a call on our phone. And it's the doctor. And he's hollering at us. Rah, 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 rah. That dude was gone the next day. Bagram, get out of here. And they sent him away because he had no idea what he was doing. And he didn't, look, I don't want to act like we're big shots, but he didn't know who he was fucking with. And the biggest problem was he didn't respect the Jordanian colonel, and then he didn't respect us, and so he got destroyed. He got sent somewhere else. But that's the interoperability that you have a lot of this stuff in your book where you can see. Oh, and this is the thing I was going to say. And really, I swear to God, I'm gonna shut up. But when you see things that are off, you see these negative values within an organization, then you can go, oh, there's a problem here. And on that quad chart, if you see values of incompetence or corruption or whatever, if you hear someone saying, oh, those guys are all corrupt, you can instantly go and go, oh, they don't understand the goals and the decision making, or they understand the goal, but they don't understand their decision making. And so you can apply pressure to that part of the quadrant and go, how do we fix this? Because there's a gap of cultural understanding here that Pete can say, hey, here's where a problem is we're looking at farmers and saying they're too stupid to know how to use a pump. I'm going to go prove you guys wrong. And then we can all try to figure out why they aren't using the pump instead of inventing these reasons like they're too stupid. And that was such a powerful thing for me to hear someone say the negative thing. And then I grab my pen and I self-task, why don't farmers use the pump? Why don't they, this is a great story. Why don't they grow grapes on the trellis like we told them to? All right, Pete will go ask, you want to give me a priority information requirement? All right, I'll be back. Just give me a few minutes, right? So I go out and I've talked to several farmers in several different areas. And I'm like, why don't you grow them in? And I didn't say that. I had a whole conversation. They're like, you guys understand that when we do American things, the Taliban hates that. And then we get put on Front Street. So we get it. We grow more grapes on the trellis. You don't have to tell us that. We're grape growers. What we're allowed to do is grow them on these brick walls. That's what we're allowed to do. And so that's what we do. And so it was never about intelligence. It was about security. And if they felt unsafe, they were never going to do the thing that we thought they needed to do. But we are such assholes that we're like, oh, they're too stupid to do a better job. Uh-oh. I talked so much that Charlie's ran out of batteries. Woo, boy. All right. Well, listen, that got me fired up. I hate that I used up all of Charlie's phone, but this was a great conversation. I hope you guys loved it. This book is really so fantastic. You see how excited I got about it. There's all these conflict resolution guides and everything else. He's done a lot of work with this thing, and I highly recommend you guys get it. Tons of great stuff in there. The link is right down there below. You can type in Charlie Hurdt with a D, H-U-R-D-T. Go to Amazon, buy this book. All right, I'm going to see you all later. Thank you all so very much. Bye-bye. I'm going to run the credits here. Boy. All right. Hey, thanks for watching the show. I really appreciate it. Right here, you can subscribe. Please do that. It makes the show grow. Hit that notification bell so you know which incredible guest is coming up next. Down below is the PayPal link. You can put a small subscription in. That is an enormous help. All that money goes right back into the show. And then right up over here are the next episodes you should listen to, curated by yours truly. Thank you so much for watching.